The music at the La Vella Terrace was so loud it vibrated in my teeth. But I felt nothing. I walked past tables of smiling, champagne-drinking guests. I ignored the ocean view, the 7-tier cake, and the ice sculptures that were already starting to melt. I was a ghost in a dark emerald dress, and I only had one destination. At the head table he was laughing. Julian. My Julian. He looked smug and handsome in his white tuxedo. Beside him sat his new bride, Annalise, her face glowing with triumph. I walked straight toward them. The laughter froze on Julian's lips. His face turned the color of ash. Mara, he whispered, his voice cracking. Don't. I ignored him. I looked directly at Annalise, who was staring at me with confusion. I placed a thick, beige manila folder on the table, right on top of her designer place setting. Congratulations on your marriage, I said. My voice was calm and cold, not shaking at all. I believe this belongs to you. Annalise, her brow furrowed, opened the folder. Her smile didn't just fade. It dissolved. Her face crumpled into a mask of pure horror. A sharp, ugly sound tore from her throat, cutting through the music like a siren. The entire reception went silent. She didn't look at Julian. She looked at me, her eyes filling with a hatred so deep it was almost black. You! She hissed. How dare you? If you've ever felt this betrayed, you know exactly why I did it. Share this story if you believe secrets always come out. It had started 1 year ago. I was at my desk at Thorne Financial. I was a top-tier analyst and I was good at my job. I loved finding patterns, the little details that told the real story. I was supposed to meet Julian, my fiancé, for dinner. We were picking out invitations for our own wedding. He called, his voice strained. Last-minute deadline, my love, he'd said. You know how it is. I'm so sorry. I told him it was fine, that I understood. I had been working late anyway, planning to surprise him by finishing a big report. As I walked past the CEO's office to get coffee, I heard a voice. It was Annalise, a new, harmless colleague from the marketing department. She was always so sweet to me, always asking for advice. Now she was whispering and laughing into her phone. He's canceling on her right now, she giggled. He said he feels so guilty, the big baby. See you in 10, baby. My blood turned to ice. Baby. That was our pet name. A cold dread washed over me. It was a coincidence. Had to be. But my analyst brain was already screaming at me, telling me to check the facts. I stood by the coffee machine, my hands shaking, and I knew deep down that my life was never going to be the same. I tried to dismiss the feeling. I went back to my desk and told myself I was paranoid. I was just stressed about the wedding. But the dread didn't go away. It sat in my stomach like a heavy, cold stone. I couldn't focus on my report. All I could see was Annalise's smiling face. All I could hear was, see you in 10, baby. So I did what I do best. I looked for patterns. I opened the quarterly report for a joint project Julian and I were managing. I scanned the expenses, the vendor lists. And there it was. A new vendor I didn't recognize. Silver Gull Boutique Hotel. The name sounded fancy, but I knew the part of town it was in. I did a quick search. It wasn't a boutique hotel. It was a notorious, hourly rate motel by the docks. Julian had coded the charge as client accommodations. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was one charge. Could be a mistake. Typo. But I knew Julian's booking habits. He was meticulous. He wouldn't make this mistake. I checked the date on the receipt. It was from last Tuesday. The night he told me he had to work late. The night he slept on the office couch because he was too tired to drive home. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely use the mouse. I right-clicked and hit print. The printer down the hall hummed to life. I walked over, my legs feeling like jelly, and picked up the single piece of paper. The receipt. I went back to my desk, opened my drawer, and pulled out a fresh manila folder. I didn't know why I did it. Just felt like the only thing I could control. I put the receipt inside and wrote Julian on the tab. That night I couldn't sleep. I waited until he was in the shower, and I opened our joint bank account. The one we were using to save for our wedding. I started scrolling. They weren't big, obvious charges. They were small. Mart. Disguised. Business lunch at a romantic restaurant for two on a Saturday. Fuel charge that matched a taxi fare to a part of town we never went to. Jewelry stores. Flower shops. Dozens of them. Each one was a tiny little cut, a tiny little lie. He was using our future to pay for his secret present. I sat there in the dark, the light from the screen illuminating my face, and I printed every single one. The folder got thicker. That night when he came out of the shower, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just put the folder on our dining room table. It made a solid, heavy sound in the quiet apartment. Explain, I said. His charm, the easy smile he used on everyone, just evaporated. He looked at the folder, then at me, and he tried to lie. Baby, what is this? Some work stuff. Opened it. The receipts spilled out. The motel. The dinners. The jewelry. His face went from pale to red. He tried a new tactic. He got angry. He raged. He started yelling that I was a psycho for spying on him. He said I was crazy, that I was making it all up. Then he started gaslighting me. He said it was my fault. My fault. He said I was too cold, too focused on my career, too in my own head. He said my ambition drove him to it, that I had pushed him right into Annalise's arms. He said her name without even flinching. The fight was the ugliest thing I had ever been a part of. He threw a glass against the wall, and it shattered, just like everything I thought we had. The next morning he was a different man. The anger was gone. In its place was a desperate, weeping child. I woke up on the couch to find him on his knees in front of me. His eyes red and swollen. It was a mistake, Mara, he sobbed, clutching my hands. A stupid, meaningless mistake. She means nothing to me, I swear. This was it. This was the begging. He swore it was over. He swore he would cut Annalise out of his life, that he would quit his job if he had to. He said he would do anything. He begged me not to throw away our 5-year history, our home, our future, for his one stupid error. He begged me for forgiveness. I looked at him, the man I had loved, the man I planned to grow old with, and I felt nothing, just a cold, empty ice. I saw him for what he was, a child in a man's body, crying because he got caught. I pulled my hands away from his. Get out, I whispered. He blinked, the tears stopping. What? Get your things, I said, my voice stronger now. And get out of my apartment. Now back at the wedding, the whole room was staring. The silence was heavy, broken only by Annalise's ragged breathing. She shoved the contents of the folder, the motel receipts, the restaurant bills, the photos of them kissing, off the table. The proof scattered across the white linen and onto the floor. Lies, she screamed, her face blotchy and red. It's all lies. She's a crazy ex. She's jealous. She's obsessed with him. Julian, finally finding his voice, jumped to his feet. He pointed at me, his face a mask of fake outrage. Security, he yelled. Get her out of here. Get this crazy woman out of my wedding. 2 large men in black suits started to move toward me. I didn't flinch. I just stood there. Security, wait. The voice was quiet but full of power. It was Mr. Thorne, Annalise's father. Lucio. He stood up slowly, his face pale. He wasn't looking at the photos of his new son-in-law kissing me. He wasn't looking at the hotel receipts. His eyes, sharp and analytical, were fixed on one piece of paper that had landed face up at his feet. It wasn't about the cheating. It was one of the joint bank statements. He recognized the account numbers. She didn't just bring photos of them, Dad, Annalise sneered, trying to regain control. Her composure was cracking, the perfect bride turning into a cornered animal. She's trying to ruin us with lies. I shook my head, keeping my eyes on Mr. Thorne. He's right, Annalise, I said, my voice carrying in the silent room. You should have looked deeper in the folder. It was never just about the cheating. I reached into my small clutch and pulled out a second folder. This one was thinner, more official. This one, I said, stepping around the table, is for your father. I placed it in Mr. Thorne's hand. He opened it. Inside there were no photos. There were spreadsheets, wire transfer confirmations, and internal memos. It showed in clear, undeniable detail how Julian had been siphoning money from Thorne Financial for months. He had been stealing from his own new father-in-law. And the worst part, the part that made Mr. Thorne grip the table for support, was the digital signature on the transfers. He had used Annalise's credentials to do it, framing her for the entire thing. Mr. Thorne stared at the proof, his face turning from pale to a deep, dangerous red. He looked at his daughter. His eyes filled with a new kind of betrayal. Annalise, what did you do? He whispered, his voice shaking. And then the most amazing thing happened. Annalise stopped crying. Instantly. It was like a light switch. Her face hardened, the mask of the crying victim dropping away to reveal something cold and hard underneath. What I had to do, Daddy, she said, her voice dripping with contempt. He was weak. I knew he would be. He wasn't stealing from me. He was stealing for me. Julian, who had been standing there looking confused, finally spoke. His face twisted in genuine shock. What? He stammered, looking between Annalise and me. What are you talking about? Annalise. You said this was our money. For our future. This was a twist I hadn't even seen coming. I had assumed Julian was the mastermind, and Annalise was just his greedy partner. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. Annalise let out a laugh. It was not a happy sound. It was sharp and broken and full of poison. Oh, Julian, she said, turning to her new husband. You really are that stupid, aren't you? She finally turned to her father, who looked like he was about to have a heart attack. You never gave me the respect I deserved, she spat at him. You always treated me like a princess, but never like a partner. So I found my own partner. She gestured to Julian. Or at least a tool. I needed someone with charm, someone with access, and someone dumb enough to take the fall. She revealed the whole plan right there in front of everyone. She was using Julian to steal from her own father. Her plan was to let the theft get big enough, then use the evidence I had collected to frame Julian. She was going to send him to jail and walk away with all the money. Julian was never her partner. He was just a con man who got out-conned. And I was just the girl who was supposed to take the blame with him. Flashback. 9 months ago. I was sitting in Mr. Thorne's office, the same office I'd walked past that horrible night. After I kicked Julian out, word got around Thorne Financial fast. The engagement was off. I was called in to see the CEO. He was so kind. He told me how devastated he was for me, how he couldn't believe Julian would do such a thing. He said he admired my strength. Then he offered me a promotion. He wanted me to take over Julian's accounts, to be in charge of the whole division. He said he needed someone he could trust. Someone with my eye for detail. He asked me to clean up the mess Julian left behind. I was so grateful. I thought he was rewarding my hard work, that he saw my potential. I didn't realize what was really happening. It wasn't a promotion. It was a setup. He was putting me in charge of the very accounts his daughter was actively robbing. He was making me the scapegoat, and I was thanking him for it. I was so blind, so broken-hearted. I didn't see the trap until it was too late. I buried myself in the work. It was the only way I could cope. I worked 18-hour days, digging through the mess Julian had left. And that's when I found it. The real theft. It was buried deep, hidden under layers of fake invoices and shell companies. Annalise was sloppy. She was arrogant. She thought no one would ever look this closely. But I did. I saw how they were moving the money. But then I found something that made my blood run cold. My digital signature. It was on the initial transfers, the ones that started the whole thing. It was forged, and it was a good forgery. But I knew it wasn't me. I looked at the date. It was from the week after Julian and I broke up. They hadn't just cheated on me. They hadn't just tried to steal money. They were planning to send me to prison. Right alongside Julian. My revenge plan, which had started as a folder of heartbreak, suddenly changed. This wasn't about a broken heart anymore. This was about survival. I printed everything. The folder got thicker. Flashback. 1 week ago. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. Mara. The voice was smooth, sincere. It was Julian. My heart stopped. We hadn't spoken in months. I know this is out of the blue, he stammered like he was nervous. I'm getting married next week. To Annalise. He said it like I was supposed to be happy for him. Then he said he was truly sorry for everything. He said he needed me to know that he had found peace, and he just wanted me to be happy too. Then came the real reason for the call. He begged me to say I forgave him. He said he couldn't move on with a clean conscience, unless he knew I didn't hate him. I held the phone, my other hand resting on the thick manila folder that now sat in a safe in my closet. I realized he wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was checking to see if I was still a threat. He was afraid I would show up. My response was cold and quiet. I hope your wedding is everything you deserve, Julian. I hung up the phone and booked my flight. Present. The wedding reception was in chaos. Julian, finally realizing he had been played by everyone, lunged. But he didn't lunge at me. He lunged at Annalise. You bitch, he roared, his face purple with rage. You ruined me. Before he could even touch her, the 2 security guards tackled him. He hit the floor hard, taking a tower of champagne glasses with him. Glass shattered everywhere. Annalise shrieked, pointing at her father. Daddy, do something. Call the police. Get him arrested. Mr. Thorne, however, was not looking at Julian. He was holding the fraud evidence, his mind clearly racing. He was a businessman and he was calculating. He saw an angle. He looked up, past his crying daughter, past the man being held down on his floor, and right at me. What do you want, Mara? He asked, his voice low and steady. The entire room was silent, waiting for my answer. He wasn't asking as a father. He was asking as a CEO. He was asking for my price. Want. I repeated, my voice echoing slightly. I wanted the life he and I were building. I wanted the promotion I actually earned. I wanted to be safe. I looked at Julian, who was sobbing in the grip of the security guards. I looked at Annalise, who was wiping her running mascara with a silk napkin. I wanted the life you 2 tore apart and then tried to pin on me. I turned back to Mr. Thorne. I don't want your money, I said, and I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. I want my name cleared. Completely. And I want justice. Pulled out my phone. A complete, unredacted copy of this folder, I said, tapping the papers Mr. Thorne was holding, was sent to a financial crimes reporter at the City Chronicle 15 minutes ago. It is set to publish on her blog in 10 minutes, unless she gets a kill code from me. Mr. Thorne's face went white. His company, his reputation. All of it was on my phone. This was the heart of my revenge. Not just to expose them but to show them I was smarter. Mr. Thorne's face was a terrible sight. He looked like he had aged 20 years in 2 minutes. No reporters, he whispered, shaking his head. He knew his company wouldn't survive that kind of scandal. He was a shark, and he knew when he was bleeding. He tried to take control. He snapped his fingers, pointing at Julian. Security. Hold Mr. Armitage for the police. He will be charged with assault. Then he turned to his own daughter. His face was stone. And hold her too. She will be charged with fraud. Annalise let out a shriek that was more animal than human. Daddy, you can't. I'm your daughter. You stopped being my daughter when you tried to destroy my life's work, he said, his voice like ice. He turned back to me, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. There. Done. Now call the reporter. He thought he had won. He thought he could control the narrative, sacrifice his daughter, and still come out on top. He was wrong. No, I said. The room, which had started to buzz, went silent again. Mr. Thorne stared at me. What? You don't get to control this, Mr. Thorne, I said, stepping closer. Not anymore. I do. I walked over to Julian, who looked up at me with pathetic, tear-filled eyes. You begged me for forgiveness, I said to him. This is your penance. You will take the fall. Alone. I then turned to Annalise, who was staring at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. And you, I said. You wanted my life. You wanted to sit at the top. You can have it. You're going to stay right here. Finally, I turned to Mr. Thorne. Here is my price. Your company will survive. You will announce my promotion to head of risk management. Effective immediately. My salary will be triple my current one. The reporter gets a no story. Annalise will be sent away for exhaustion, and Julian will be your only scapegoat. You will clear my name by blaming him for everything, including the forged signatures. This is my one and only offer. 1 month later, I walked into my new office. It was a corner office on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was Annalise's old office. As I walked down the hall, the whispers followed me. That's her, they'd say. The folder queen. I heard she made Mr. Thorne cry. They call her the Black Widow. I didn't care. I sat at my new, massive mahogany desk. Mr. Thorne had kept his word. A company-wide memo had gone out, explaining that a thorough internal audit, run by me, had uncovered a massive fraud scheme, perpetrated by Julian Armitage. I was hailed as a hero. Julian was facing trial, and without the Thorne family lawyers, he was going to prison for a long time. Annalise, as promised, was sent to an exclusive wellness retreat in Switzerland for her exhaustion. I had won. I had the job, the money, and the power. So why did I feel so empty? I was safe, but I was surrounded. I had won the war, but I was now trapped in the castle I had conquered. My life was stable, but it was cold. I worked, I went home to my new high-security apartment, and I slept. I had won, but it was a lonely victory. I had no friends at the office. They were all too terrified of me. I had cut off my old friends, ashamed of what I had become. I was the folder queen, and my fortress was made of spreadsheets and non-disclosure agreements. One evening I came home and checked my mail. Tucked between a bank statement and a high-end catalog was a plain white envelope. No return address. My heart started to pound. I opened it carefully. Inside there was no letter, just a single photograph. It was a picture of me, taken at the wedding. I was standing in front of Annalise, holding the second folder. My face was cold, triumphant. I turned it over. One word was written on the back in red ink. Soon. A cold chill, colder than any I had ever felt, ran down my spine. This wasn't over. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I went to the only person I could. I bypassed my new assistant and walked straight into Mr. Thorne's office. I threw the photograph on his desk. This was in my locked mailbox last night, I said. He picked up the photo, looked at it, and then sighed. It was a heavy, tired sound. I was afraid of this, he said. He looked up at me, and for the first time I saw genuine fear in his eyes. She's not in rehab, Mara, he said. I sent her to the clinic in Switzerland. She was there for 3 weeks. Then she vanished. She cleared out a hidden trust fund I didn't even know she had. She's gone. He had underestimated his own daughter, just as I had. He wasn't my boss anymore. He was a terrified father. She's not just coming for the money, I said, the realization dawning on me. She's coming for me. He nodded grimly. And she will burn down this entire company to do it. I need your help, Mara. Find her. Find her before she destroys us all. And just like that, Mr. Thorne and I became the most unlikely team in the world. He was the CEO with all the power and I was the analyst with all the data. We locked ourselves in his office, and we started to follow the money. It was harder this time. Annalise was smart. She was moving money through offshore accounts, using cryptocurrency and covering her tracks. But I was smarter. I started to see a pattern. The way she moved the money, the digital habits. They felt familiar. "Oh my God," I whispered, staring at the screen. "What?" Thorne asked, leaning in. "She's not just hiding," I said. "She's framing me." Again. I showed him the data. She was using my old digital footprints, my old passwords, habits from before I was promoted. She was building a new case, a new folder. And this time, it would look like I was the one who had stolen the money, and that I had framed Julian and her to cover my tracks. "She's not running," I said, my blood running cold. "She's coming back for me." We tracked her. Took 2 days with no sleep. We followed her digital trail to a small, private airfield outside the city. "She's booking a flight," I said, my fingers flying across the keyboard. "It leaves in 1 hour." Mr. Thorne didn't hesitate. "My car is downstairs. Let's go." We got there just in time. We saw her standing near a small jet, a large duffel bag at her feet. She wore a black baseball cap and sunglasses, but it was her. She looked different, harder, leaner. "Leaving so soon?" I called out, stepping from the shadows of the hangar. Mr. Thorne was right behind me. Annalise turned. She didn't look scared. She didn't look surprised. She looked amused. She slowly took off her sunglasses and smiled. "I knew you'd follow me, Mara," she said, her voice full of scorn. "You're just so predictable. Always have to have the last word." "It's over, Annalise," Mr. Thorne said, his voice booming in the hangar. "There's nowhere left to run." "You think I'm running?" she laughed. "Daddy, you never learn. I'm not running. I'm just waiting." "He's not coming," I said, a sick feeling in my stomach. "Who's not coming?" Annalise's smile faltered for just a second. "Your mystery partner. The one who's been feeding you all this information." And then he stepped out. Not from the jet, but from behind Mr. Thorne's car. It was Julian. He wasn't in a prison jumpsuit. He was in an expensive suit, looking calm and relaxed. "I posted bail, no thanks to you," he said, nodding at Annalise. He looked at me. "Or you?" I was confused. "How?" "You're not the only one who knows how to build a folder, Mara," Julian said, and he smiled. It was a real smile this time. A winner's smile. He had a third folder. One on Annalise. One on her father. He had been playing us all from the beginning. He knew Annalise was using him. He let me build my case. He let me crash the wedding. He let me expose Annalise and her father, so he could use the chaos to his advantage. He wasn't the fool. He was the puppet master. He had used my revenge to enact his own. It was a standoff. Julian and Annalise started screaming at each other, a torrent of poison and blame. He had promised to get her out. She had promised him a bigger cut. Mr. Thorne was on his phone, yelling at his lawyers, trying to salvage what was left of his company. And I just stood there watching the three of them. This was my life now. This was the win. A dark hangar, 2 con artists, a broken CEO, and a lifetime of looking over my shoulder. Revenge. Folders. But I looked at Julian, the master manipulator. I looked at Annalise, the failed mastermind. I looked at Mr. Thorne, the king of a broken castle. I realized they were all the same. They were trapped in a game that nobody could ever really win. While they were all screaming, I saw a small service door at the side of the hangar. It was unlocked. I didn't say a word. I didn't make a grand speech. Just walked away. I opened the door, stepped out into the night, and I never looked back. 6 months later. One large coffee, black. A woman named Mia smiled as she handed the cup to a customer in a small coastal town cafe. I wiped down the counter. I lived in a tiny apartment above the shop. It was small, and I could smell the ocean from my window. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Pulled it out. It was a news alert, one of the only ones I still got. Julian Armitage convicted in Thorn financial fraud case. I read the small summary. Julian was going to prison for 20 years. Mr. Thorn had stepped down, citing health reasons. Annalise was still an international fugitive, last seen in Dubai. I looked at the alert for a long moment. Then I deleted it. I deleted the app. Put my phone away. I looked at my hands. There were no folders, no spreadsheets, no designer clutch. They were just hands, ready to make the next coffee. I wasn't the head of risk management. I wasn't the folder queen. I wasn't even Mara anymore. I was just Mia. And for the first time in my life I was free. I hadn't gotten the perfect revenge. I didn't get the money or the power. I just got out. And I finally realized that was the only victory that mattered. If you've ever had to walk away from a toxic situation to save yourself, you know that true freedom is the best revenge. Share this if you agree.